Okay, we are back with episode 16 of the Move Worthy podcast. We are finishing up our first time homebuyer series. This is part 4.
Part 4. There's a lot.
I don't think we expected it to be a series. I thought we were maybe just going to talk about it all at once, but it is a huge process.
Yes.
We went through seeing houses, making offers, bidding wars, getting accepted, deposits, what that looks like, inspections, and now we are at
Appraisal.
So once you get through your inspection process, like you're happy with the repairs, seller, buyer agree, the next step is going to be to order your appraisal. And every now and then you might order an appraisal first. If there's, I guess, any question on pricing, I've had that happen maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
In my career so far, and
that happened. I had that happen a few times when we were in the crazy market.
Oh yeah.
When the interest rates dropped really low, we did appraisals up front. Especially if we were writing. Of course, we weren't writing no due diligence and no inspections. We were doing them,
right.
But if we were writing no repairs, we would do the appraisal up front.
You would do the appraisal up front and
Yep.
just get it out of the way.
And just get it out of the way.
Yeah,
that way the sellers had just a little more assurance that, and ultimately I think for a seller, it's beneficial for them because they don't have to wait to the end to hoop that hurdle. You know what I mean? And
like the appraisal's good, we're good.
Yeah, if the appraisal is good, then we'll, whatever we have to deal with during inspections,
right.
That'll be the end of it.
Right.
It's not, maybe I have to put $15,000 worth of repairs into this house, and what if it doesn't appraise and I have to come down another $15,000? Like, that's huge for a seller.
That's true.
So yeah, I've only had to do it a few times, and it was in a very aggressive market.
Yeah, I think the one time, or I think I may have only done it once, maybe twice. I can't remember the second time, but I remember the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a changing market where prices were just
dropping or raising,
starting to rise, and the sellers were like, "No, this is what we want for this house." Put it on the market, got an offer right away, but they were worried about the price and worried about it appraising. So they wrote it into the contract. Appraisal was to be done first. If it didn't appraise for the sale price and the seller didn't agree to meet the appraisal price, then the seller would have been responsible for paying that buyer back the appraisal cost.
Oh, wow.
We wrote all that into the contract.
Oh, nice.
Because then it kind of, you're a buyer, you want the house, but
right.
Obviously it has to appraise.
Yeah.
And if we can't come to an agreement, then you just wasted $400, $500.
Yeah.
So the sellers agreed to that, and it worked out well. It did appraise, and that was a new comp for that neighborhood.
And I think a lot of on the appraisal part of this process, something for a first-time home buyer is what they need to know is that is an expense. That is not. It's not part of the deal. So
it's out of pocket.
It's out of pocket. So like inspections, appraisal can be one of those things. Some lenders do offer it as one of their perks, free appraisal.
Oh, okay.
And some don't. Some roll it into their closing costs and they have that figured out. Mm-hmm. Some don't. But something that first-time home buyers should prepare for outside of inspections is appraisal, and it can typically run $500 or $600.
Right, I know. I think they've gone up. Used to be $450, then it was like
$525. Yeah, I think we're closer to $575 now.
Yeah, everything.
So definitely something for first-time home buyers to consider an extra expense.
So you recently, and you're working on your appraiser's license right now.
Yes.
So what should a buyer and seller, I guess, be concerned about in appraisal? I know the different types of loans might call for different types of repairs to be done. Mm-hmm. Some appraisers more specific and detailed than others. Like, what's your take on that?
My biggest pointer I can give to buyers is appraisers are very subjective.
Yeah.
And it's a tough place to be in because, your agent might advise you of a specific number, whether you're a seller or a buyer, and that appraiser can come in and it just be totally off. It doesn't happen super often, but you could always appeal. There's an appeal process that you can go through, and if you did, you may find that the next appraiser comes in completely different, and that's a hard place to be. It's a really hard place to be. So, lenders tend to work with the same appraisers. What happens is appraisers go into a pool with a lender or a bank, and there's typically only 5 or 6 that might work a specific area. So they rotate through those appraisers, and they get used to using the same appraisers over and over for specific areas. So they get used to what they expect from a property and what they don't expect. If they're going to be super hard on whether you have CO2 detectors, whether you have smoke detectors, whether, chipping paint is going to be a problem for an FHA loan, those types of things. I think lenders can definitely help guide you in what's to come, as well as your agents. Agents should be prepared for what appraisers are coming to look for.
What might show up in an appraisal that might need to be repaired before appraisal.
Yep.
I know I have one right now, and there's some peeling paint on the outside windows. We had it under contract, FHA loan. We knew that was going to come up.
Yeah.
So once we got through inspections, I had already had that conversation with the seller. We're going to need to do this for sure.
Right.
I had an appraisal come back $40,000 less.
Wow.
And then we had it reappraised with a different appraiser, and it appraised for value, for a sale price. That one was insane. I couldn't even.
It's so subjective, and it's very beneficial to have an agent that can look at an appraisal and look at the comps that they used and just kind of know the market. And
it was an out-of-town appraiser.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That had something to do with it. And how did the other one come back at
40,000 higher?
Those comps didn't just appear
suddenly. Right. Yeah. I know it does happen, and appraisals are one of those things that you just hold your breath and hope for the best.
I know. Lately, though, it's been okay. But
it has been.
But I don't know if you noticed, these last 6 months were quite slow for a lot of towns in our area. I was telling you the other day, Norco being one.
Yeah.
That makes me worry for appraisals, because now we really don't have a lot of comps.
Yeah, so appraisers, typically go back 6 months if they can get it, if not a year. But when the market gets stagnant for a few months, then, and then things start to sell, they're typically selling at a lower price because they've sat longer. So now the comps have become new comps, typically lower valued comps. So that's kind of where the market shifts and makes its change. Because the comps have now changed, so appraisers are using different comps, and then you'll start to see a trend of prices
dropping. Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, and I think in this situation they are falling, but the amount of houses that have gone under contract in the last 2 weeks, I'm hoping
total insanity.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that to quickly change.
Yeah.
We'll have a few of those bad comps in there, and then we'll start to see the good ones pop in.
I think there's still a lot of good comps.
Yeah.
To support. I don't think it's been quite long enough, or as many that have dropped in value or sold at a lower price point. I still think there's some really good comps out there to support good sale prices. Yeah. But like I said, it's subjective. So an appraiser can go out there and pull every low comp they can possibly find, and that's what you got.
Yeah. So
crazy.
What would you tell a first-time buyer looking to buy a fixer-upper? I usually have these conversations. Mm-hmm. What type of loan are you wanting to get? Because that's going to depend on what type of fixer-upper you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Because things get called out.
Right.
We mentioned the peeling paint. I had an FHA appraisal. The appraiser called out oil stains on the garage floor. Yes. Wanted them scrubbed, however you clean that.
Wow.
Called that out. That one was a crazy one. I've had some really random things, and then I've had VA call out some broken fence boards. Mm-hmm. They cited safety issues. Mm-hmm. Of course, broken window glass or window pane. They usually will catch that. what's some other things that you've seen or heard that are maybe out there, or just something to prepare a buyer for?
When it comes to a fixer-upper?
When it comes to a fixer-upper, like what concerns? I know appliances in certain have to be in there.
Yeah, I actually had a first-time home buyer go look at a fixer-upper a few weeks ago, and we actually put an offer in on it. It definitely would not have gone FHA. What happened was they gutted the house and started the work but didn't finish the work. So while it didn't have countertops, I was told that wouldn't be an issue.
Really?
But the fact that the appliances were sitting in the middle of the kitchen and not pushed into the spot where they belonged was going to be an issue.
Was going to be a problem?
Not having trim work around the doors was going to be an issue.
Okay.
Of course, any kind of exterior exposure. So if you have missing siding or soffit or fascia where, you can see into the attic spaces, that's, of course, going to be a huge red flag.
Obvious roof damage, I would imagine.
Roof damage is definitely an issue. Non-functioning plumbing. So if they don't have functioning toilets, that's an issue. That's an issue for sure. These buyers were actually doing a conventional with a reno loan.
Okay.
So what appraisers do in that situation is they'll value it as is, and then they'll value it post renovation. So those items don't typically flag because they're able to do both sides of it, as is and then post renovation. So, but I would probably, if I had a first time home buyer going FHA, I would probably steer away from fixer-uppers.
Fixer-uppers, I know. It's just too subjective. You don't know who you're going to get to appraise. I mean, I've seen a house pass that I was definitely expecting repairs to be called out.
Or you could always do just NAV cash.
Oh yeah, then there's NAV cash.
We do have a lender that does that.
We have to do a whole episode on NAV
I know,
cash.
we do.
Yeah,
we do have a lender that offers a
great program.
It is a great program, and you can actually pay cash for the property, close on it, and then turn around and put a mortgage on it, which is great. But that'll be a whole nother episode.
Oh, it would be a whole episode. So I guess. So if the appraisal comes back, the value's good, you move towards closing. If the appraisal comes back and the value does not meet sale price, there are some options.
Yes.
You either could pay out of pocket the difference between the contract price and the appraisal price,
which is not likely.
Doesn't happen often. It happened in 20 and 21 a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you want then you would ask the seller to come down to the appraisal price,
and that's the most common practice that's what we see happen. That's what we see happen most of all. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, there's not too many buyers out there that are going to be willing to pay over appraised value. So sellers are typically cooperative when a buyer comes back and says, hey, you were $5,000 off and it came in $5,000 lower than our contracted price. Can you meet the appraisal? They do.
They usually do. Yeah. I've had some renegotiate some closing costs when it was a little bit more than expected.
Yeah.
And I've only had that happen a couple times. Last year I had one of those happen, and it was a little significant for us, but the sellers were good with it. We just reduced some of those closing cost assistance, and then of course the buyers were happy because they got I think they got a really great deal on a great house.
Right. For less than they thought.
Yeah. So they were okay with removing those closing costs, but the sellers agreed. We amended the sale price, and then we moved on to the closing.
Yeah.
So
that's the most common.
Yeah. So once you get through appraisal, you go to the closing table. It's usually, I'd say 2 weeks maybe, and it depends, I guess, on how fast the process has gone so far, what has gone to the underwriter so far.
Yeah, I think at that point, depends on the lender.
The lender, yeah.
Sometimes lenders will put it through a full approval process conditioned on appraisal.
And then you're just waiting for
So you're just waiting for that appraisal to get to the closing table. So, everything else is done at that point. Some don't, and some can't because they're waiting on specific things or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I would say all in all, a week to 2 weeks after appraisal,
Expect to close.
expect to close.
Okay. And you typically, you get the keys that day, unless there was some other agreement made in the contract to either a post-occupancy or a pre-occupancy. But typically, you're going to get your keys that day. You're going to sit in a room with the buyers and sellers and your agent and the title attorney. You're going to sign a lot of paperwork, and then you're going to get your keys. And it's going to be an exciting day.
Exciting, stressful, reliefful.
Yes. It's
day.
All of the above.
Yes.
But overall, it's a
great
great feeling.
Absolutely.
As a realtor, it's a great feeling to see the smiles, the signing the paperwork, first time buyer. It's an exciting moment.
Yeah.
So. Usually
first time home buyers are there's not a shot that it's not exciting. It's the ones that are like selling and buying. Those are the ones that are super stressed. Yes. They usually have a U-Haul loaded up, waiting in the driveway, and at closing waiting for the keys.
I know.
That's a stressful thing. But for first time home buyers, it is typically
an exciting moment.
Exciting moment for sure.
For everybody, I think. I think everybody's happy on those days. So that's first time home buying. I mean, just to recap it, you're getting with a realtor, you're getting pre-approved, you are looking at houses, making offers, doing inspections, appraisals, then you go to the closing. So we could have just wrapped it up in one episode, probably, right?
No, indeed. No. There's so much more that goes into that.
I know.
That's your punchlines. But yes, that's your checklist.
That's the checklist. So first time home buying.
Get an agent. Get a good agent. It's a lot.
A good lender. A good lender. A team of people to help you get through this process is probably the most important thing that we could say.
Definitely.
It should be an exciting time. While new and a little bit unfamiliar, like that's why you have good people on your team to get you through.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. So that was the last episode of the First Time Home Buying series, part 4, episode 16 of the Move Worthy podcast with myself, Jenny Lindley, and
Lauren Jones.
And together we have the experience to
move you forward.